The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, June 9th. I hope everybody's having a good week. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for accommodating, I know, the unusual hour. So let's jump into it. Iran. Iran. Wouldn't it be nice if I could do a show without mentioning Iran once? Wouldn't that be cool? I guess no time soon, I guess, that is going to happen. Anyway, yesterday, the Iranians shot down a U.S. Army AH-64 Apache helicopter near the Straits of Hormuz. Donald Trump tweeted the following: "I've just been informed by a great military that last night the Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters while patrolling over the Straits of Hormuz. There were two pilots involved. Both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must, of necessity, respond to this attack. Thank you for your attention to this matter." I think that was posted, I don't know, sometime this morning. Sometime this morning, he said that. Then, as the day progressed, Trump started downplaying the Iranian shoot down of the Apache, telling the Wall Street Journal, it's not a big deal, and the pilot is doing well. So vowing a military response, then not a military response, then what the hell? What the hell is going on? According to Wall Street Journal, a phone call with the Wall Street Journal, Trump said blockade was making Iran very poor. Said it's always been very poor, and he would keep it in place as long as necessary. He sought to play down the helicopter incident, saying that it wasn't a big deal and stressed that the pilot is okay. The Apache crew spent 2 hours in the water as darkness fell, according to Captain Bill Hawkins, spokesman of Central Command. One senior U.S. official described the crew's escape from the downed aircraft as a hands of God moment. Anyway, it turns out his first statement was the right statement. So about an hour ago, U.S. Central Command announced that its forces began launching self-defense strikes against Iran at 5 p.m. Eastern Time at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief in response to yesterday's downing of the U.S. Army Apache helicopter. Importantly, they say the mission is proportional. They've read their just war theory. Proportional response to unjustified Iranian aggression. It seems like there are explosions in three areas around the Straits of Hormuz, in 2 ports, and on the island that is kind of central to the Hormuz Straits. No details yet. It seems like a very limited response by the U.S. Against coastal targets in front of the Straits of Hormuz. These are the targets that a week into the war, literally was the Saturday after the war began, I said the primary focus of the United States should be right now to eliminate everything the Iranian military has on the coast of the Hormuz Straits, exactly where they're bombing right now, in the ports and on the islands, to just eviscerate it, bomb the hell out of it, eliminate it. They still haven't done it because there's still targets there that need shooting at. So, all right. So tit for tat, tat for tit, back and forth. We go. The Iranians have already threatened that given if the United States responds to them downing of the helicopter, which one of their people claimed was an accident. The helicopter just happened to be in the route of an Iranian drone. They just collided, a complete accident. That they would retaliate. If America retaliated, I'm really, really hopeful that they actually do retaliate. I hope they retaliate. I hope nobody dies from their retaliation, but I really do hope that they retaliate. And at some point, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm delusional. Maybe at some point, if the Iranians do enough stupid things, if they build stupidity upon stupidity, it'll actually penetrate through that thick skull of the President of the United States that, yeah, we have to go back to war, and let's actually win this, and let's actually bring about a regime change. I doubt that'll happen, but the Iranians are certainly, anybody else would have got the message by now, but it doesn't seem that way. Anyway, as we speak, explosions. I don't have details. We'll probably get details in a little while. We know where the explosions happen, but we don't know the damage. We don't know if anyone's retaliating. I'll keep an eye on this, but explosions were on Custom Island, and they included enemy fighter jets fired the projectile straight in on the Custom Island. There were also explosions in Bandar Abbas, which is the main port in the Straits, and then there was also more attacks, repeated attacks on Sirik. Sirik is another port further south along the Straits, also on the coast. So that's where the attacks are happening. And now I guess we wait to see if anything else happens. We'll see. I will try to keep an eye out for it. United States states that these strikes are a warning shot and not expected to hinder peace negotiations. God forbid the negotiations are going so well, and, downing a helicopter where the pilots survive is such not a big deal, that this is just a warning shot. We don't want the peace negotiations to stop, because the most important thing in the world right now is the peace negotiations. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, interesting how the pilots were saved. The pilots were actually saved by an unmanned surface vessel, a Serranoic Corsair, which is a small unmanned boat. It located the crew, who had spent 2 hours in the water off the coast. They climbed onto the boat, and it brought them to shore, where they were picked up by a helicopter. A Serranoic is a venture-backed, from what I understand, it's a venture-backed startup that's, backed by what do you call it? A16Z, right? A16Z. This is, we now have a whole new generation of startups focused on the military, supplying the military with drones and technology and AI and all this stuff. And here you see one of those technologies in action. It's exciting to see. Here's you can see if you go to their website, not to their website, but Serranoic and Palantir are working on on a variety of autonomous naval capabilities. Right. This is a story from last year, from March of last year. Serranoic Technologies and Palantir announced a strategic partnership to accelerate the development and deliver autonomous naval capabilities by combining Serranoic expertise in maritime autonomy and scalable manufacturing with Palantir's advanced software solutions, including warp speed. This partnership will set a new standard for rapid, cost-effective, and mission-ready autonomous system manufacturing to deliver the U.S. Navy's future hybrid fleet vision. So we saw one of these boats in action. Again, exciting to see, and this is the future of warfare. It's the future, I think, of the U.S. Navy. I think there are going to be fewer large aircraft carriers and more small autonomous boats that can clear mines, that can autonomous submarines that can rescue pilots, that can go into enemy harbors and wreak havoc. So there are going to be a lot of these. You go online, you can find pictures of the Serranoic Corsair. It looks like a decently sized a boat where two people can get on board and be rescued. So it's not just a tiny little thing that travels on the water. This is very cool. It's 24 feet. It's 24 feet. So a sizable boat. I do not know what other capabilities it has. My guess is it has surveillance equipment on board. So it's an intelligence gathering boat, but I'd be surprised if it didn't have some weapon systems as well, and was able to defend itself or to attack when necessary out there. So again, very cool. It's great to see Silicon Valley technology used to defend the United States, to protect lives, to bring two airmen back home safely. So at least 18 minutes ago, it was said that Iran strikes are still ongoing. U.S. official tells Fox News the airstrikes are ongoing. Targets include Iranian air defense and radar installations. These are the same air defense and radar installations that were knocked out a couple of months ago during the war, but they've rebuilt them and resupplied from China. So you have to knock them out again. What a frigging waste. You could have continued that war and not had to do it again. Israel did the same thing yesterday when it knocked down air defense system that it knocked down in June, and then it knocked down again 3 months ago, and now it has to knock down them again. And if they wait enough time, they'll have to knock down a fourth, fifth, sixth time. This is what happens when you don't go all in and finish the frigging job. Frustrating. I'm frustrated about this topic, as you know. Iran has already vowed a definitive response, calling the Apache shoot down a pretext. So we will wait to see how the Iranians choose to respond to this. God. Here's the thing, right? So here's more of my frustration. Mark Levin can be very good in this stuff, right? So he will say things like, yeah, you got to win this. You got to go all in. All this negotiation with Iran, that's bad. It can't do it. It can't work. You'll never be able to cut a deal with Iran that is legit because the Iranians will always cheat. He gets it at some level. Israel is an ally of ours. We should unleash the Israelis on them. He gets all this stuff, right? And then he writes this, right, about what just happened, right? Our fabulous military, on the orders of our great POTUS, is hammering Iranian positions now in response to the Iranian regime shooting down our helicopters. Great POTUS. He can't do it. He can't be consistent. He can't actually follow through. He can't actually tell his viewers, listeners, watchers the actual conclusion about how bad POTUS really is. He has to defend Trump, even as he's really been, for weeks now, criticizing his underlying strategy or lack of it. Talk about strategy. One of the questions yesterday, or day before yesterday, was why after the Israelis struck Iran, why did the Iranians not respond? And the thought was, well, they didn't want to piss off the Israelis and didn't want to continue this because they knew Israel's capabilities. It might be that there was another reason why they stopped. Now, granted, fog of war, this is just a media report. Who knows if this is true or not? But it's from an Israeli, a well-regarded Israeli news source. Khan News reported that during those attacks, or at the end of those attacks, $3 billion in Iranian frozen assets were flown from Abu Dhabi to Tehran in exchange for Iran halting attacks on Israel and Israel stopping strikes on Lebanon. Well, Israel did not stop strikes on Lebanon. In other words, somebody bribed them to have a ceasefire. Supposedly, the United States and Qatar reportedly facilitated the deal with guarantees After, missiles, blockade, civil deaths, money. The Iranians are desperate for cash. So Trump gave them cash. So again, a report by one media source, hard to tell if this is true, but I wouldn't put it past the wouldn't put it past this administration at all. Now, Trump this morning was also keeps saying, constantly saying, that there's and media has been reporting that there's a new Iranian proposal that is very, very close to being finalized. There are basically 4 issues regarding the nuclear program that are Iran's given in a lot, and it's very close to figuring out kind of the technical details. But a deal is ready to be signed within days, Trump keeps saying. On the other hand, we constantly hear from the Iranians that no new proposal was sent from Iran to the United States. Indeed, according to Fars, the Iranian state-backed media, they're denying reports that any kind of revised Iranian proposal was sent. And they're saying that, they're doing nothing with enriched uranium. They're not transferring to another country. They're not going to dilute it. And that everything that Trump is basically saying is false. Go figure what actually is going on. I don't know. I have no idea. But there you have it. Good. All right. One of the consequences of this war, we talked about this weeks ago, that one of the consequences of blocking the Straits of Hormuz is that the Gulf states are going to figure out ways to get around the strait, to deliver the oil and natural gas without going through the straits. And supposedly today, Turkey and Saudi Arabia signed a massive railway corporation deal in Riyadh. It's still a memorandum of understanding, so it's not an actual deal. And this would advance plans for a modern railway that would connect portions of Western Saudi Arabia up through Jordan and Syria and into Turkey and to Turkish ports on the Mediterranean, which would then deliver oil or whatever else is being shipped along these tracks. There's also talk of connecting this railway to UAE, potentially to Iraq and Kuwait, and to the Gulf. And of course, there's extensive talks about building new pipelines that would take again oil and natural gas through Jordan and Syria into Turkey. Now, this will strengthen Turkey's position in the Middle East dramatically. And note that a couple of months ago, the discussion was all these new routes would go through Israel. But that depended on Israel and the United States winning the war against Iran. Israel coming out of this war strong, victorious, and Iran no longer being a dramatic threat would have really integrated Israel into the Middle East, primarily through the Saudis, and would have somewhat marginalized Turkey and Syria. But the opposite has happened. The United States has proven to be a weak ally. Israel has proven to be beholden to the United States. As a consequence, Saudi Arabia and others are looking for alternatives. And those alternatives, it's just as easy to go through Syria and Turkey a little longer than to go to Israel. Now, Syria has an Islamist regime. Turkey has Erdogan, an Islamist regime. Saudi Arabia is trying to be more moderate, but could easily swing back towards being more Islamist. It's not like it would really go against its DNA. And this potentially alliance of Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Turkey, not good. Not good for Israel, not good for the United States, not good for the region, but an inevitable consequence of the United States not winning decisively. Saudi Arabia also, I think, if this continues, if really what we get is basically no ultimate resolution, and the equivalent of an American surrender or an American defeat, the Saudis are going to want protection. They're not going to get it from the U.S. They've got some kind of deal with the Pakistanis, but they don't know if they can trust the Pakistanis. What would be the ultimate self-defense weapon for the Saudis? Well, the same one that the Iranians want. I think you'll see the Saudis try to get a nuclear bomb. They probably won't build it. They'll probably try to just buy it from Pakistan. Pakistan has plenty. And the Saudis might just try to buy it from the Pakistanis. And I think a deal between the U.S. and Iran that is perceived to reflect American weakness is going to generally increase nuclear proliferation around the world, including by the Saudis. And that's just not good. The Saudi regime is not a stable regime. It is, moments away from being dramatically radicalized into an Islamist regime. All it takes is somebody assassinating MBS. Do we really want another Muslim country to have a bomb? Do we really want another country that could easily fall into the hands of the Islamists, the jihadis, the suicidal bombers, to have a bomb? That would be insane for the West to allow that to happen. But that's the consequence of losing. It's the consequence of losing. And by the way, let's be very clear what losing means here. The United States didn't lose to the Iranian military. The Iranian military is meaningless. The U.S.'s loss is a loss of will, not of military capabilities. Again, the United States has the mightiest military force in the world and in all of human history. It could take out any army in the world. Chinese are the only ones that have any chance. But you need the will. You need the spirit of winning, of going into battle to win, going into war to win. Anyway, Iran is confirming that it will have a definitive response to tonight's American strike. And it'll be interesting to see if they actually do and what that response is and who they attack. And is it America? Is it the UAE? Is it Kuwait? Is it Bahrain? It is hard to tell. So, we will see what the Iranians are claiming, at least, that they will respond. They will respond. I have no idea what that means. And it's hard to tell with the Iranians, right? All right, it looks like Iranian naval bases were hit hard. Bandar Sirik naval base confirmed struck. Valayet naval base in Jusk was also possibly targeted. 6 separate airstrikes were reported on Qasem Island, all minutes apart from one another. So the United States, they decided to go not all out, but they pushed it. All right, let's see. We'll keep watching that. They also supposedly hit drone manufacturing sites. I thought we took all those out already. Surprised there are any drone manufacturing sites left. They're calling it self-defense after, because of the thing. Yeah, all right. Supposedly the Iranians are going to hit within minutes. The decisive response will be within minutes. So if it is within minutes, we will be here live reporting on it on the Yaron Brook Show. Okay, one more story coming out of that part of the world. Supposedly the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu warned the Security Cabinet yesterday that Israel may reach a point where it has to confront Iran without U.S. support. According to this, he spoke during a cabinet meeting on Monday. He said Israel could face a situation in which it would have to, quote, deal alone with the Iranians, without American backing and with the costs it would entail, including shortages of ammunition and growing international isolation. He said, quote, we do not want to get there, but we know we could get there. At the same time, IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir also reportedly warned ministers against the emerging agreement with Iran, between the U.S. and Iran, saying, quote, as we see it, almost any agreement is a bad agreement. Yeah, I mean, Israel's worried. I mean, it's good if Israel just does it alone and gets, settles it. It will face real ammunition problems. So it's going to have to figure out. It's got a significant military industry. It's going to have to figure out the things that it relies on today. The things that it relies on today. On the United States, how does it create capacity in Israel to cover them? Iran can't expand. It doesn't have the resources, and whatever military it had, will have in the future, is going to be pathetic. The only major power in the Middle East is Israel, and that's not going to change. That is not going to change anytime soon. All right, let's see. So I guess earlier today, was it today or yesterday? Yesterday. Congressman Thomas Massie, who just lost his primary and therefore I guess has nothing to lose, went on the House floor and gave a speech blaming the United States. This is blaming Israel for attacking the USS Liberty. The USS Liberty. During the 1967 war. 1967, what is that? 59 years ago. Making a big deal out of it and demanding that we need a new investigation launched by the U.S. government into the circumstances of what happened. 59 years ago. Now, Massie has never in his career mentioned this. This is a first. But here's the thing. The attack on the USS Liberty by the Israelis during the Six-Day War is always a launching pad, if you will, a launching point for anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Massie is going to become only more and more and more of an anti-Semite from here on. This is what happens. The USS Liberty is a linchpin in all American anti-Semitic stories. I've talked about this on the show in the past. He wants a new investigation. There have been 11 investigations of USS Liberty case. 11. The first investigation, right after the event, on June 18, 1967, presiding officer was Rear Admiral Isaac Kidd, found no evidence of intentional attack. The verdict was mistaken identity. There was a CIA memorandum, intelligence memorandum, dated June 13th, 1967, found no malice. Attack was a mistake. A JCS fact-finding team on June 18th, 1967, right? These are all immediately after, fresh. Examined U.S. military communications handling before and during the attack. Clark Clifford report, July 18, 1967. Presidential advisor Clifford found no evidence the ship was known to be American. State Department Sailens report, September 1967. Legal and diplomatic assessment by State Department counsel Carl Sailens. Same conclusion. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, 1967. Secretary McNamara testifies there's no evidence attackers knew it was a U.S. ship. House Appropriations Committee, 1967 and then again 1971. NSA officials briefed Congress on Liberty's mission and communication failure and found no reason to believe Israel did this on purpose. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, 79 and then 81, found no merit to claims the attack was intentional. NSA internal report, the Gerhard report, 1981, concluded the intercepts tended to rule out any thesis that Israeli Navy and Air Force deliberately attacked a ship they knew to be American. House Armed Services Committee 91-92 found no support for the claim the attack was intentional. State Department conference and documents released January 2004 released all remaining classified CIA and NSA memos. NSA historian David Hatch stated the evidence, quote, strongly suggested Israel did not know it was attacking a U.S. vessel. But we need another one. We need another one. Because the anti-Semites will always claim, oh no, it's AIPAC. AIPAC bribed all these people. AIPAC is behind it all. I mean, just ask yourself, in the midst of a six-day war, now, U.S. is not a full-out ally of Israel because, it wasn't supplying weapons to Israel at that point. But in the midst of the Six-Day War, why would Israel bomb a U.S. ship? I mean, the reality is that this was a tragic friendly fire incident, thoroughly invested for decades, and all of them show the same thing: friendly fire, accident. And it's not like there haven't been, friendly fires before. Friendly fire is a common attribute of warfare. And here's what the conspiracy theory asks you to believe. At the time, Israel had 2.5 million people. It was fighting for its literal survival on 6 fronts simultaneously against 110 million Arabs, equipped with Soviet tanks, Soviet aircraft, and Soviet warships, and with no formal American alliance, no American weapons, and no guarantee that anyone was coming to save them. Indeed, a knowledge that nobody was coming to save them. So on day 4 of this war, Israel, this tiny little country fighting for its survival against a Soviet-armed enemy, decides, out of nowhere, to deliberately attack the one country on earth that might eventually one day become an ally, and to do so in broad daylight, in international waters, leaving 174 survivors who could identify the attacking forces, while 14 separate investigations across 2 governments found zero evidence of intent. Israel's own military had accidentally bombed its own armored column the day before, which again is not unusual. It's just such a bizarre conspiracy theories of all the things to do. It's just weird. And by the way, it's the only friendly fire case that people keep repeating. Why? Why aren't the British pissed off at the fact that the U.S. killed a bunch of British soldiers during Gulf War I? Because Israel did. I mean, the U.S. did. It killed a bunch of British soldiers accidentally. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it wasn't accidentally. Maybe the U.S. had an ulterior motive to killing the British soldiers. I mean, even the Israelis, the Israelis weren't hiding this. They immediately let the Americans know that this had, apologize for it. In the Israeli Naval Museum in Haifa, there's a memorial to the victims of the USS Liberty. May their memories be an eternal blessing. And the names of all the casualties are listed there. Israel has done nothing but treat this with respect, open up the books. It's bizarre. The whole thing is, it's only because it's Israel. It's only because Jews are involved. And if you look at the friendly fire incidents during the 1991 Gulf War, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 such incidents. In a matter of 5 days, 16 incidents in a matter of 5 days. Most of them U.S. killing U.S. Some of them U.S. killing U.K. It's war. Fog of war. Accidents happen. But for a congressman like Massey, who's not stupid, who knows all this, he's figured his base of support, his future in the Republican Party, is among the anti-Semites, and he's going to play to them. He's going to cultivate them. He is going to work with them. And this is his announcement. He's coming out. He's coming out. I'm an anti-Semite, world. Now you know. I'm on the USS Liberty conspiracy theory. Yay! And sadly, so much of the people calling themselves libertarians, so many of the people calling themselves libertarians are exactly this. Crazy conspiracy theory, anti-Semitic nuts. Another reason why I do not call myself a libertarian. I am not a libertarian. Keep me away from those guys. All right. So a few days ago, I did a story on the murder of 18-year-old Henry Nowak in the UK by a Sikh. And I got an email that was critical of my analysis, saying that I had made some errors in it. And it turned out that most of the criticism of what I had said was true. That, it wasn't. I mean, I don't think in spirit what I said was wrong. I think fundamentally it was right, and I'll emphasize that. But certain details were glossed over and were inaccurate, and too much of the framing was the framing of the kind of the right in the UK who were trying to make this into a political issue. And it does have a political issue. We'll get to that. So I wanted to, come clean, and I wanted to do a more thorough analysis of what actually happened there, because this is making the news, particularly in Europe and particularly in the UK, but it is all over the place, and it's important to get the analysis right. So step one, this has been tried in court. I think a jury and a judge. And the murderer, a Sikh by the name of Vikram Singh Digwa, was sentenced. So was found guilty of murder and sentenced. And the judge actually wrote a report in sentencing Digwa. He wrote a report describing what happened. So I'm just going to basically summarize what the judge said, so you get a sense of what happened. Now, Digwa was sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering Henry Nowak, 18-year-old student. Now, the minimum term, he got a minimum term of 20 years and 190 days, really 21 years. He got 175 days deducted because he's already spent those in custody. That's the minimum sentence. The sentence is a life sentence, which is the sentence for murder, with a minimum of 21 years. So after 21 years, he would be eligible for parole. Now, what happened according to the judge and according to the jury? Henry Nowak, an 18-year-old student at Southampton University, walking back to his accommodation after an evening out, and the judge here emphasized that Henry was alone, that he was unarmed, and that he was not drunk. His blood alcohol level was below the legal drinking limit. Anyway, he encountered Digwa, and as what the judge called a chance meeting, right? Digwa was sober as well, and was carrying 2 knives. I talked about this when when I did the show. 2 knives. One, which is a small kirpan, which is a knife that legally in the UK, you're not allowed to carry a knife. Not allowed. It's illegal to carry a knife, right? But Sikhs are allowed to carry a kirpan because it's part of their religion, that you have to carry a knife. But he also carried a large Sikh dagger in a sheath. Now, this dagger is supposedly a requirement that you wear as part of a particular segment of the, a particular type of Sikh. I talked about that also on the show the other day. And that was visible on the outside of his clothing, this big dagger he's walking around the street with. The judge accepted that Digwa was a Sikh and a member of the Ninhung tradition. This is a tradition where you get to carry this large dagger, but stressed that wearing the large visible second knife was not a strict religious requirement. The judge said the legal religious privilege of carrying such a blade brings with it huge responsibilities, and that a kirpan is not to be used offensively except as a last resort in genuine self-defense. Now, Henry apparently saw the dagger and took out his phone and started filming Digwa and asked him if he was a bad man. Now, according to the judge, Henry's tone was not aggressive and it was not threatening. There was, obviously, according to the judge, in reality, a tragic error of judgment. Don't harass people carrying big daggers. I think that's generally a good rule. Just walk away. Digwa responded that he was a bad man. This is all based on, I think, the video from the victim's phone, that he was a bad man. He moved towards Henry and took Henry's phone. And the judge concluded that Digwa was not frightened. Rather, he felt disrespected, especially because he was being filmed. Struggle began, right? Probably because Henry was trying to get his phone back. And it's possible that in that altercation, Digwa's turban, the thing the Sikhs wear on their head, was knocked or pulled off, which probably added to Digwa's anger. Digwa, according to the judge, should have exercised self-restraint and control. And then even strong words or verbal threat might have been justified, but no more. This is the judge writing. Digwa then deliberately drew the dagger, stabbed Henry in the chest. A fatal wound went about 8 centimeters deep, passed through the upper ribs, caught a lung, and cut an important vein behind the collarbone. The pathologist found about, a lot of blood in Henry's chest from that, and probably there was no way to save him at this point. He was dead as soon as that dagger went and hit that vein. Henry was also stabbed twice in the upper leg, once in the lower abdomen, groin area, and slashed in the face. The judge says Henry was effectively defenseless after one or more of the blows. By contrast, Digwa had little, if any, injury, and the judge noted there was no independent evidence of meaningful injury to him. So there's no argument here that this is self-defense or an appropriate response. Now, the judge also made a big deal out of the fact that Digwa lied. Judge repeatedly called Digwa account a lie. Digwa claimed Henry had barged into him, attacked him, and racially abused him. The judge rejected all of that. He said he was sure Henry had said nothing racist and that the accusation was completely inconsistent with Henry's character, and I think the audio that they got off the phone. After the stabbing, Digwa filmed Henry while Henry was suffering and trying to get away. He denied that Henry had been stabbed, even though he knew he'd been stabbed in the chest. He told his mother to take away the murder weapon, sheath and belt. He also kept Henry's phone, which contained incriminating footage, and had no intention of handing it over to the police. And then there is actually a police recording of Digwa speaking to his brother, where he admits that he stabbed Henry 3 times. He was doing it in whatever language, their own language, so he thought it wouldn't be understood, but they translated it. It was on a police recording and admitted that he'd stabbed Henry 3 times, including once in the chest, and agreed to pretend it had been self-defense. The judge said Digwa knew he was guilty and was trying to cover it up. So, why the sentence 20? Why was 21 years the sentence? So for murder, the sentence in the UK is life imprisonment. The legal question was the minimum term before parole considerations, right? So the judge applied what's called Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act of 2020 and started at 15 years, not 25, because he found Digwa had not taken the knife to the scene for the purpose of committing an offense. So because the knife was part of the tradition, he started with a lower rate. If he had not been a Sikh, one wonders if he would have started with a lower rate, right? So he started at 15 years. He said it was possible Digwa initially had a legal religious reason for carrying the dagger, though that justification ended once he removed it from his sheath and used it. The judge then raised the minimum term to 23 years because of aggravating factors: multiple stabbings, the use of a highly dangerous weapon, Henry suffering as he lay dying, the degradation of filming him, the cover-up, blaming Henry, involving his mother in removing the weapon, Henry's vulnerability as an unarmed 18-year-old alone, the wider community impact, whatever that means, the misleading of police, and the abuse of legal privilege given to Sikhs to carry a knife for religious reasons. So the abuse of the legal privilege given to Sikhs to carry a knife for religious reasons was one of a whole list here of reasons to increase it to 23 years. Now, I don't know, this seems like a pretty damning list. And this is murder we're talking about. Now, granted, I don't know how UK law works. This could be completely reasonable, but it strikes me that for murder, I don't know. I'm a big believer in murder. You throw away the keys. It's life sentence, and that's it. That is it. And giving all these aggravating, the lying, the involving his mother, the trying to cover it up, the filming, the basically no remorse, he should have got a lot more than 23 years. Now, he reduced it to 21 years for mitigating factors: Digwa's age and lack of previous convictions and the lack of premeditation. Okay, so it's not premeditated murder. It still seems light to me, 21 years for something like this. Right? So that's the judge's statement. That's the story. Now, there is an additional controversy, and this is where the politics come in, right? This is where the politics come in. The police arrive. They're lied to by Digwa, and potentially other family members were there. And they conclude that Nowak is not the victim, but he is the perpetrator. They handcuff him as he is telling them, "I've been stabbed. I can't breathe." And when he says, "I've been stabbed," the police officer says, "and I can't breathe," the police officer says, and this is from webcam or cams that officers wore. I don't think you have, mate, without checking. Now it's dark. Nowak is wearing dark clothes. But that is at very minimum a massive failure by the police. As somebody tells you they're stabbed, you check, you touch. If it's dark, they have flashlights. You check to see what's going on. By the time they did, Nowak was dying. Now, granted, they couldn't have done anything anyway. So clearly something went wrong here, right? There's a bad judgment on the part of the police, even allowing for darkness, even allowing for the confusion and Digwa's lies. The police seem to have made a serious failure of judgment. They didn't sufficiently test the story they were given. They did not treat Nowak's own statement as urgent medical evidence, and they restrained a gravely wounded man. I think the police commissioner has already acknowledged serious concerns, quote, serious concerns about police impartiality, fairness, and judgment. And they apologized for it. Now, obviously, the police didn't cause the death because he was dying anyway. He's going to die anyway. But they might have if the injuries had been different. Right? So, clearly bad judgment. And then the question is, was the bad judgment related to what is called two-tier policing? That is the idea that in the UK, at least, there is, if you're an ethnic minority, then you're believed. If you're white, you're not believed. Whether that is real. Now, there is real concern about this. And look, there's plenty of evidence that the police are hesitant to go after criminals because of ethnicity. Because they do not want to be blamed for being racist. Again, I think the grooming gangs is a great example of this. And I think not enough has been made of those grooming gangs, given how horrific what they did was. So, what's going on here? Sorry. See, here's the thing about policing in the UK and kind of there is in the UK there is a police anti-racism commitment that has language that is deeply problematic. It says, for example, that racial equity means producing equality of policing outcomes. And what does that even mean? Does that mean if you arrest two blacks, you have to arrest two whites? Does that mean if you arrest two Muslims, you have to arrest two Christians? What does that mean? It says that the police need to respond to people according to their specific needs, circumstances, and experiences. And explicitly says, quote, it does not mean treating everyone the same or being colorblind. So they're discouraged not to be colorblind. Now, this doesn't mean that in this particular case, this is what happened to the police, that they believed Digwa because he's Sikh, and they didn't believe Nowak because he was white. We don't know that. There are inquiries going on into that right now. But it does mean that they're being trained in kind of the anti-racist language and perspective of the woke early 2000s that basically says, whites are guilty of racism by the very fact that they're white. And that you do need to have two-tier policing. They're being trained in it, doesn't mean they behave that way. I mean, the fundamental standard should be, identify the victim, identify the threat, preserve life, gather facts. Identity politics should not be involved. Right. Now, we will see what actually comes out of the inquiries that are being launched around this, and there are a bunch of inquiries, right? The police were misled by Digwa and made a catastrophic error under pressure, no question about that. But to what extent were they open to that misleading because of an anti-racist, in quotation marks, it's not really anti-racist, it's kind of racist, ideology, which has been part of police training in the UK over the last few years. Right? Look, there is plenty of racism out there. Racism towards people of various ethnic groups, and the so-called anti-racism of some members of those ethnic groups towards whites and authorities towards both parties. There's sadly lots of racism out there. But cases like this are good opportunities to evaluate police training. And police should be trained in being colorblind, in being objective. The question is, would the outcome have been exactly the same if the ethnicities had been reversed? I don't know. We don't know. And again, we'll see what the outcome suggests. But do I believe that the woke racists are influencing policing all over Europe and in the UK in favor of, often it's Muslims, but generally, people of color? Yes, I do. Do I also believe there's racism against those people? Yeah, I do. Both can occur at the same time, and both do occur at the same time. I think it's much more prevalent in Europe than in the US. You're seeing it, and you're seeing it with all the, releasing of terrorists early, and we did a story on this where we covered this. You saw it in some of the coverage of increases in rape in the 2010s after the big Muslim immigration into Europe during that period. You're seeing it. And you saw it in the grooming gangs, and you saw it in the way terrorists are treated. So you got to be on the lookout for this, and you've got to call it. Justice must be colorblind. Justice must be blind, right? Is the terminology. All right, that is my corrective on the story. I think we've covered everything I needed to cover. All right, let's see. That's that. Where are we now? All right. Yeah, I mean, there's a story in the Financial Times that was really interesting, and this is about AI. And this is going to be a repeated story that we're going to have to cover over and over and over again. The title of the story is "The Coming Rise of Anti-AI Populism. Anxiety about technology is set to generate a political backlash." It shows that about 70% of Americans think AI is developing too fast. Americans are also worried about they're going to lose jobs. They're worried about cost of electricity and water. They're worried about doomsday scenarios involving AI. The data center build out is raising a lot of activists to block it, and this is happening in red states and in blue states. Funnily enough, most of the build out for AI data centers is happening in blue states, and there's a lot of activism against that. You're also seeing among Republicans a split between kind of the more traditional pro-business Republicans and the Josh Hawleys of the world, right? Josh Hawley is anti-AI. And Trump right now is perceived as representing the pro-AI faction. But this is, of course, across the board. We heard yesterday, I told you about a proposal by Bernie Sanders to actually take, the government should take 50% stake in all AI companies. Trump kind of agrees with that, although he doesn't think it should be that high, maybe only 10, maybe only 20%. Right now, AI is less popular than Trump. It's less popular than ICE. It's really unpopular. And it's not going anywhere. It's only going to become a bigger and bigger part of our lives. And as we become a bigger and bigger part of our lives, it will become a political football. So, something to watch, something we will keep track of. Here's the foreign minister of Iran saying, despite its defeat on the battlefield, the U.S. opted to test our determination. Our powerful armed forces will leave no attack or threat unanswered. Leave our region if you want to be safe. History of the Persian Gulf has many chapters on dire fates of intruding outsiders. The only person who lies more than the leadership of Iran is Donald Trump. They know they have no capacity to respond. All right, a separate story about AI is, obviously the infrastructure, the building out of data centers is generating a huge demand for skilled blue-collar workers, welders, and people who can build these massive electricians, fiber technicians, mechanical tradespeople, people who can build and then maintain data centers. In response to this, Meta, which is, of course, the company that owns Facebook, Meta is offering free training for people to work in its data centers, and it guarantees them a job in a skilled trade after completing a 5-week course. So it is committing $115 million to the program, which is open to qualified veterans, career changers, and others who want to enter the skilled trades. The initiative is dubbed America's Workforce Academy. It will first launch in Indiana, Louisiana, Ohio, and Texas. To quote the press release, it says, every graduate will leave with a verified industry standard credential in high-demand fields such as electric work, mechanical systems, and plumbing. Technology companies, all these data centers are going to need all these workers. I think this is great that the technology companies are offering to train people in these skills that they'll be able to use, after they work on this. So this is part of the good news. It's pretty cool that the technology companies are stepping up to this. All right, I just want to remind you, because we're way behind our fundraising goal, I want to remind you that we do have goals, and we did okay yesterday, but we need to do okay every day. Time is every day. Time doesn't get freer as the week progresses. So ask questions, super chat questions. That way you get to get me to talk about what you want me to talk about. And, jump in here. and ask on anything. You can ask for $2. You can ask for $500. That's the max is 500. We are way short of our targets for today, so please consider coming in with some kind of support. You can also do a sticker, which is just value for value, a trade, one-on-one. And I'm delivering. Trade with me. Value for value. All right. Sad day today. I mean, this actually happened a couple of days ago. But over the weekend, Gordon S. Wood, the American historian, was actually, run over in a parking lot at I guess, a grocery store. He was 92 years old, and he died of his injuries. Gordon Wood is probably the number one historian on the American founding. He, wrote influential books, and generally speaking, was one of the good guys. He was actually Bradley Thompson. Bradley Thompson has been on the show. He was actually Bradley Thompson's dissertation advisor. So Brad worked, studied under Wood and remained quite friendly with him. Was actually Wood was supposed to come down to Clemson in the summer to participate in one of Brad's programs with students. So this is real tragic, a real force, and somebody who I think had a profound understanding of what America represents and what America is really about. I think I read to you some sections of an op-ed he wrote just towards the end of last year, November 2025. The title of the op-ed, this was in the Wall Street Journal, was "Why America is a Creedal Nation." So this is an op-ed written in response to the J.D. Vances of the world and others who claim that America is blood and soil, heritage Americans. And I thought Wood wrote a good op-ed arguing that no, that this is indeed a country that what unifies it are not ethnicity, not so-called race, but what unifies it is our ideas. And here again, I agree with him, primarily the ideas of the Declaration. And Gordon Wood is one of the few people out there, few historians, I think, out there, who understood the important significance of the Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence, which is what shaped America, which what made America America. Indeed, as I've said many times, you can't understand the Constitution, and you cannot understand America. You cannot understand the success, the growth, the expansion, the wealth, the power of America divorced of the Declaration of Independence. I'll actually be talking about that at Ocon this year. So, the Declaration was what made America America. And he understood that America was a country of the Enlightenment. Right. So they tried, So he was one of the few who really, understood. This is a land of rights. This is a country established on the foundation of all men are created equal in rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this is why this is a land of immigrants. And that what binds us together, again, what makes America America, is the ideas in the Declaration. This was his final paragraph in that op-ed. Since the whole world is in the United States, nothing but the ideals coming out of the revolution and their subsequent rich and contentious history can turn such an assortment of different individuals into the one people that the Declaration says we are. To be an American is not to be someone, but to believe in something. That is why we are at heart a creedal nation. And that is why the 250th anniversary of the Declaration next year is so important. One of the sad things about his passing is the fact that he didn't get a chance. He didn't get a chance to experience the 250th anniversary of the document that he said was the most important political document in American history, the Declaration of Independence. So I salute Gordon Wood, a great historian, an historian of America, an historian who understood, and, I'm sure I disagree with things that he wrote. He was not an objectivist. He didn't have an objectivist perspective on the revolution, but he had an Enlightenment perspective on the revolution. And that is so rare these days that you've got to celebrate the few who actually share that with us. So, sad loss. If you want, Brad did write a post on some of his memories from his relationship with Wood on his Substack, so you can check that out. All right. Again, I remind you, come in with stickers, come in with questions. We've got a few questions, not many, so the Q&A, the super chat section of the show is going to be short. All right. Human achievement time. We should have a drum roll thing for human achievement. We should have a special sound that announces the good news of shifting to positive topics. Okay, here's one. Right, this is the headline from a story in the Times. This is from Tampa, Florida. And it says, nearly 900 lives have been saved at Tampa General Hospital in Florida in the 4 years since it introduced the game-changing Sepsis Hub. It's a system developed in partnership with Palantir. Palantir, which is known primarily for defense AI software that sits in weapon systems and surveillance systems, also works with hospitals, it turns out. And in this case, a hub that helps identify sepsis cases early so that they're treated quickly, and uses AI to guide treatment. And this is amazing. And again, you're going to see more and more and more of this. Unfortunately, the story itself was behind a paywall, but I think just the headline suggests good things. Here's another one, also from the space of healthcare. This is where we're getting most of our good stories these days. An AI, was trained on 200,000 brain MRIs. This is at the University of Michigan. And basically all the 200,000 brain MRIs, this is the entire digital library since radiology went digital at the university. The AI can now help diagnose over 50 neurological conditions in seconds with a 97.5% accuracy. It knows which cases need urgent care. Well, knows is a little strong, right? Again, with the help of a physician. It knows which specialist to call. It does all of it, really fast. The AI is called Primer. It just outperformed every other AI model tested against it. And again, this is kind of stuff that a radiologist takes years to study. Now, it can't do this without a radiologist, right? This is an AI that is going to triage and classify brain MRIs as part of a process where it works with a radiologist, a neurologist, a clinical team responsible for patient care. But it's going to increase productivity in medicine dramatically. And what it means to increase productivity in medicine, it means quicker diagnosis, quicker treatment, better recovery, more life, less death. That's what it means. And that is really cool. Really cool. And then finally, from the world of energy, this one's not a technology. This one is finally some of these energy companies are, acknowledging reality. British Petroleum, which for many years was one of the leaders in the alternative energy field and a leader in advocating for net zero, has basically restructured its corporation and relegated the net zero division to a much lower status that it used to have. The oil and gas giant confirmed plans on Tuesday to split its business into two distinct segments, upstream and downstream. It currently operates with three business divisions, including one focused on gas and low-carbon energy. That's gone. The restructuring is part of a continued effort to win over shareholders. Yeah, people want a return on their investment. And a lot of skepticism about zero emission, about climate change hysteria. And they kicked out the chairman of the board last month. And, again, they've divided upstream and downstream. Upstream team will include BP's oil and gas operations, exploration and oil production. It will also include carbon capture and storage business. Fine. Its downstream division will include refineries, pipelines, biofuels, aviation, hydrogen, and its Castrol vehicle lubrication offering. Its renewable power operations were previously part of its gas and low carbon group. However, these will now be carved off under BP's other businesses segment, as the company said it would continue to advance that, but it's just not a priority anymore. Overall, good news. I think there's a lot more realism in the world today with regard to net zero, with regard to so-called alternative energy or unreliable energy, as some call it accurately. So I think you're seeing a significant decline in the United States, certainly, but even in Europe, of kind of the panic and hysteria over climate change. Now, it could come back. It couldn't come back, but one of the reasons parties of the right seem to be winning all over Europe is because people are fed up with the high energy prices. They're fed up with the shutting down of nuclear power plants, fed up with the shutting down of natural gas. They've had enough of the windmills and zero carbon agenda. And I think that's a big part of the right winning. So politically, the climate change hysteria is a lot less popular than it used to be, particularly in Europe, where the hysteria manifested itself in real political action and therefore real damage and therefore real cost to people, and people are rebelling against it. And that's good. We'll see if it holds. But for now, that's good. Would be better if they understood the deeper issues. All right, that is the news for this June 9th. It is a Tuesday. Let me quickly check on the news and just see if the Iranians have responded to the military attack earlier today. It doesn't look like it. It looks like Yeah. Not clear. It doesn't look like anything has happened. Anyway, we will keep an eye and see if. Oh, wait. Yeah, there are all kinds of initial reports of ballistic missile shot, but I see nothing confirming that. So so far, nothing is happening. All right. Let's see. Reminder, ask questions. Use stickers to support the show. This show is only possible because of support from people like you, listeners and watchers, people live and people who listen after the fact. And if you're listening after the fact, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Do it now as I say this. That way you don't have to remember later on. Just click on your phone for a second, open a browser, go to patreon.com, get an account, sign up, look for the Yaron Brook Show, and make a monthly contribution. And then you don't have to think about it again, unless you want to, of course, increase your contribution, monthly contribution in the future. So please consider doing that now, getting it over with. Don't have to consider it. And those of you, of course, here live, please consider doing a sticker. That'll help us get to our targets or to ask a question. All right, our sponsors, the Ayn Rand Institute, is reminding you that ARI Live, which are these live courses you can take online, I guess summer program is opening soon. It will include multiple different courses, by some of the best teachers in objectivism. I'll be teaching a course on globalization and trade. Globalization and trade. It's going to be fun. So don't miss out on that. And, you also have courses on objectivism and the philosophy. You sign up for them. You can sign up at aynrand.org/YBS. aynrand.org/YBS. And don't forget that you have a discount code. You have a discount code for these courses, right? The discount code is 26YBS10. Now, when you get to the page, if you go to aynrand.org/YBS, it'll actually give you the code there. Copy, paste it in when you sign up and you get 10% off, right? We've got this is all fall. I'm trying to look for the courses on the summer 2026. Let's see what they're offering. Summer 2026. You got Philosophy of Objectivism with Onkar Gate. It's a 10-week course. And God, you'll learn so much. Onkar is so good at this. The lectures themselves are recordings, but then you'll have live discussions with Mike Mazza. So, sign up. And we've got Globalization, Who Needs It? That's by me. We've got Communicating Ideas Writing with Keith Lockitch, and Foundations of Physical Science, Part 3, which is Optics and the Nature of Light, which is also with Keith Lockitch. That would be fascinating. That would be really interesting. Take that class with Keith. Nature of Light. All right. Let's see. Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the show, and he is the #1 authority on all things energy, all things electricity, all things now AI. He's even writing about AI. All things environmentalism and environmental regulation. Check him out, alexepstein.substack.com. You will learn so much from him. You'll get an insight into what's going on in Congress as well, because he is involved in lobbying Congress towards a freer market in energy. And he gives you talking points on how to address issues like climate change. And, you know, as you meet with family, as you meet with friends, as you meet with people who argue these ideas, Alex's talking points are invaluable to making the opposite case. Or the rational case, not the opposite case, the rational case. All right, let's go to some of your questions. And let's see, we will start with Rand Allstarling, who asked 2 questions, each $50 Australian. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Hi, Yaron. How do you respond when someone argues a diabetic family member would be dead without government subsidized insulin? How do you separate the outcome from the policy mechanism? P.S. My name is Randall, not Rand. Okay, Randall Starling. Okay, that makes more sense. Randall Starling. Thank you, Randall. I mean, a number of things I would argue. One, the fact that you have a diabetic family member does not give you a right to the money in my wallet. His diabetics doesn't give him a right to take my money. He doesn't have a claim against my life. He doesn't have a moral claim against me. I'm not responsible for him getting diabetes. He doesn't have a financial claim against me. So the reality is that whatever happens to him, he can come and ask me to help out because he can't afford the diabetics medication, and it might help him. But he doesn't have a right to pull out a gun and take my money. And that's what the government does. He's basically hired the government to take my money to use to provide him with insulin. By what right? By what right? So I always have to make that point. Now, beyond that, how do you know he'd be dead without the government subsidized insulin? How do you know that? If there was a completely privately run healthcare system, how do you know what the price of insulin would be? Maybe it would be a lot cheaper than it is today, and you wouldn't need a government subsidy. Maybe you could afford it. Maybe family members would help out. Maybe a charity would be set up to buy him the insulin. Maybe because he can't afford the insulin, the drug company would have a charity piece and they would give it to him at a discounted price. I mean, there are so many possibilities here. But in every realm, we have seen that the free market lowers prices, increase quality. In the case of insulin, it would increase competition of both the insulin and different delivery mechanisms. And my guesses would increase the efficaciousness of the insulin. And actually, maybe if we had a free market in healthcare, we'd have cures for diabetics instead of just treating the symptoms. So there's zero basis to come to the conclusion that without government subsidies, he would be dead. And it's callous. I mean, could these family members not help him? They want me to help him. They demand I help him and you help him. Why don't they help him? If they all pull their resources together, can't they buy the insulin? I mean, insulin is not that expensive. It really isn't. It might be expensive because the government's buying it. The government's not a very good buyer of stuff. But insulin is not that expensive. And in a free market, it would be a lot cheaper. Thank you, Randall. And Randall has a second question. Hi, Yaron. How would you respond to someone is proud to have taken government subsidies for their business because it de-risked the investment? How do you distinguish between accepting a subsidy and supporting the policy itself? Well, I think there's a big difference. By supporting it, by being proud of taking it, you are saying that you are proud of taking your neighbor's money. You're proud of using force against your neighbor in order to benefit yourself. Now, I have no doubt that this subsidy has de-risked this business, has made it in some way less risky and better for him. But at other people's expense. Somebody paid for it. It wasn't the government. It was people who got their money taken from them through taxes. Again, how does he get a claim on other people's money? So the only people, I think, who should accept government subsidies, and again, it depends on the circumstances, are people who reject government subsidies. Ayn Rand has a whole essay about this. Like, the government has created this mixed economy in which it's hard to survive, it's hard to grow, it's hard to live because there's no real free market. So if the government's handing out money, why would I not take it? But I would still argue against it while taking it. That's not hypocrisy. That's recognizing that the government has created these circumstances. I paid a lot of tax money into the system. I'm getting some of it back. So I highly recommend people read Ayn Rand's essay on accepting a scholarship, government scholarship. I think it's in Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Thank you, Randall. So I don't blame everybody for taking a subsidy. I definitely blame them for being proud of it. I definitely blame them for supporting the policy of subsidy giving. All right, Jennifer says, Gowdy Hose Bridge opens next week. We're going to go across it and do some trading with those Canadian people over there. Oh, be careful. I hear the Canadians are nasty and dangerous people, and they don't want to become a 51 state, and that's terrible. Yes, the bridge is opening in spite of Donald Trump's threats. Enjoy being able to cross easily into Canada. I think this is good for the whole Michigan area. This is the bridge I talked about a few weeks ago about Donald Trump threatening not to allow it to open. So much for Donald Trump's threats. Oh, Adam asked a question yesterday, just as we were shutting down the program. More of a comment than a question. He says, peptide is a generic concept for any chain of amino acids, including most medication prescription drugs. Only a strict adherent of Christian Science can claim that he is not taking peptides. Okay, I didn't realize peptide was had such a broad definition. What I've seen it used is in certain, is in taking on certain amino acids. They're supposed to have longevity benefits and all kinds of other benefits, and people take peptide and they have a number behind it, and there's all competition which peptide is better than for you, and their whole website's dedicated to this stuff. Peptide is indeed just a generic concept for any chain of amino acids. Yes, I take peptides. Vikram says, if you had $100,000 to invest today, where would you put the money, in which asset class or market? I mean, given valuations right now, and look, I haven't looked at this very closely because I'm not actively investing right now. I would probably still invest $100,000 in a diversified portfolio of international value stocks that are generally undervalued. I'm wary of tech right now because it's such high valuations. Now, it could all be justified because of AI, but I worry that, a lot of the numbers look like they did in 1999 before the 2000 NASDAQ crash. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I worry about that. If I had 100,000 that I needed, right? That it wasn't gambling money, if you will, I would invest it safely in international value stocks. They've done very well this year. They did well last year. If the market goes up, they will go up too. They won't go up quite as much, but they will go up too. If there's a big correction, if there's a big downturn in AI and in technology around AI, then I would get into AI at lower valuations. I should worry about getting in at these valuations. I know SpaceX is going public on Friday. We'll talk about that later this week. The valuation seems very, very, very rich to me. I'm not buying SpaceX at $1.7 trillion. You know, it could go up a lot from there, but is it ultimately worth $1.7 trillion? I don't know. I'm just skeptical. I don't see it. Andrew asks, have you seen the Lego scandal going on in Oregon, Utah? Yeah, I mean, it's hard to call it a scandal. It's a small case of what might be fraud, but not clear. It's being investigated. We'll see. Okay, so this is what happened, as far as I can tell. A family had a collection of, I guess, rare Lego sets. They gave it to a store that specializes in selling these kind of things, and they gave it to them on consignment. That store that they gave it to was being run by a certain individual. The franchise owner, it was a franchise, took over the store because they believed it was being badly run by the previous owner. In taking over the store, they claimed that the Lego sets were not there anymore, and they had no record of them being sold. They also claimed that they were worth a lot less than what this family claimed they were worth. And this is in the courts right now. The family's suing the business over this. And, that I think the business is suing the previous owner, and everybody's suing everybody else. Into the middle of this, a YouTuber influencer stepped in his own investigative reporting, whatever the hell that means, and went and did a bunch of interviews and came to the conclusion that the big company that franchises itself is responsible here, and they're committing fraud. And I don't know. My response is I don't know. It seems like a hugely overblown, not particularly important story that the courts will resolve. I mean, it's in the courts. Lawsuits are being filed. This is what the courts are for. This is what the courts are good at. Evidence will be presented. It will be hashed out in court, and restitution will be provided to whoever the victim is. And the guilty will have to pay up. So, it's not a story that, it's funny because this investigative reporting thing has blown up on YouTube. Everybody's watching. Everybody has an opinion about it. It's the big debate discussion in the world. And it's like, it doesn't make Yaron Brook news show because it's not news. There's a case of fraud. It happens all the time, sadly. But it's not even clear that it's fraud. It's not clear who's at fault. It's not clear what exactly happened. And this investigative reporter, okay, so he's doing investigative reporting about a minor occurrence of fraud. So what? It just doesn't seem like it has any importance to our lives or to what's going on in the world. And I don't know if this investigative reporter has any credibility. Any credibility. So the news is that it's getting this massive following and massive response. That's the news. But that's just a sign of a weird, almost sick culture that is obsessed with influencers who make a lot of noise and get themselves into confrontations with who knows who the bad guys are really here and who to believe. That's what the courts are for. Thomas, I understand that you decry the scarcity idea in economics. I assume you think that economics should be the study of production and trade. Yes. Why do you think people like Sol, who is a good guy, do that? Well, partially because this is how it's done in economics, and this is how it's always been done in a sense. Look, there's a properly understood, you could argue the scarcity point, right? There's never. Okay, so here's the point. Sadly, even the good guys approach the world from a Garden of Eden perspective. There is some presumption of an ideal in which all our wants are just provided for. But sadly, we live in a world of scarcity. We live in a world in which that is not the case, in which our wants and desires far exceed what is just available to us, and certainly far exceed the amount of resources we have in order to purchase them. And that is a source of real frustration, which is what motivates us supposedly to go out and produce and create and build so that we get the resources to get the things we desire. But that is just a wrong perspective. Look, Thomas Sowell is religious. He's bought into altruistic philosophy. And I think this comes from that source. No, we face the world naked. We face the world with nothing. We have very minimal desires at that state. The desire to eat and for shelter. And the immediate, and it's not that those things are scarce, they don't exist. So we need to produce and trade in order to get them. And that's the beginning. It's the fact that we're born naked, without the knowledge and without the stuff necessary to feed ourselves and shelter ourselves and provide for ourselves. That is the beginning fact. And what economics is the study of, okay, what do we do then? In the face of no Garden of Eden, in the face of stuff is not going to fall from heaven, like manna from heaven. I have nothing. Okay? Use your mind. Go produce. Go create. That's what economics studies. So I think it comes from a religious perspective on the world and on man. All right. Michael, can you explain why countries like France are subsidized by the US? Sure. Well, France spends relatively little on national defense because it can rely on the United States' massive contribution to NATO and rely on the United States to protect France if it ever gets involved in a war. That was the whole post-World War II assumption. France was bailed out from World War I by the United States. It was bailed out from World War II by the United States. And I think it assumes it will be bailed out from World War III by the United States. Therefore, it can spend less on defense and more on, let's say, warfare. Right. What else? France doesn't have to worry about where the next great technological innovation is going to come from. It'll happen in America. We can stay, the French say, we can stay socialist. We can take long vacations in August. We can discourage entrepreneurship. We can build a bureaucracy and have a robust welfare state. And when we need, the next great tech innovation, we'll just buy it from the United States. And it's pretty cheap, right? Most of the stuff, most software, most computers, most electronics, pretty cheap. And the same goes for healthcare. We can run a socialized healthcare system. We can not innovate. We can not invest in new drugs. We can not invest in new medical procedures. They'll innovate in the United States and we'll fight free right off of it. We'll pay very little for it. We'll have our government negotiate with the pharma companies to get a really, really cheap rate and let the Americans pay for it. And that's actually what happens. So Europe free rides off of the freedom of Americans in that they pay for these products, but they pay way below what it would take them to develop them. And they run welfare systems because they rely on growth that'll come from America. They'll drive their economies. That's what I mean by the U.S. is subsidizing them. And then defense is, in a sense, a direct subsidy. Michael, have you seen the riots in the UK from the Islamic immigrant attempting to behead someone? Yeah, I'm seeing some photos and videos of riots in the UK. Again, an Islamic, I don't know the details of who this guy was. Is he crazy? Was he, I assume he was doing this for God or whatever. So it's not clear exactly what he, why he was doing this and what. And I've just seen pictures of the riots. I don't have any commentary on today. I'll look more into it maybe for tomorrow. Richard, as much as I despise J.D. Vance, I support Donald Trump's impeachment, which I expect to start next year. Then we need to fight Vance's stealth Christian nationalism. Yeah, I support it too, but it won't happen. So don't worry. Even if he's impeached in the House, which I expect he will be if the Democrats take it, the Senate will never vote him out. They need 2/3, I think, 66, and they will never get enough Republicans to vote on it. So he's not going to be impeached. Vance is not going to be president because of that. Randall, hi, Yaron. In Australia, supporters of a 25% gas export tax argue it's only fair that Australians get a bigger return from their resources. What's the strongest philosophical argument against the idea that they are entitled to more? Well, they're not entitled to anything. Australia doesn't have resources. There is no such thing as national resources. The resources should be owned by the people who own the land on which the resource is found. Like in America, you never get that talk. Because in America, if I find oil on my property, it's my oil. It's not America's oil. It's my oil. So, and even when it's government land, basically, it's the people who lease the land from the government who then develop the natural gas or the oil from it, who frack it. They're the ones who get the benefit from it. So there is no such thing as collective ownership of property, and there is no such thing as the state or the Australian people. What did they do for that oil? It's the people who own the land. It's the people who mine it or drill for it that own it. Now, an export tax is particularly stupid because you're making your oil, or your gas in this case, much more expensive in the international markets. So people are not going to buy it. Demand for your oil is going to go down. How is that helping anybody? But the philosophical argument is there is no such thing as collective property. There is no such thing as national natural resources. All resources should be owned by individuals or companies. It's private property. There should be no state property. Thank you, Randall, for the additional 50 Australian dollars. Really appreciate it. Okay, Harper Campbell. Since Jews are only 0.2% of the world, since Jews are only 0.2% of the world population, most people will never meet a Jewish person in their life. This makes them easy to scapegoat and demonize. Maybe, but look, in most Americans, almost all Americans have met a Jew in their lifetime. Certainly in Europe, people have met Jews, whether they know it or not. Jews are prominent in, different professions, and anybody in a profession will have met them. There's certainly, if you're in China, maybe you've never met a Jew. If you're in India, maybe you've never met a Jew, although a lot of Israelis vacation in India. A lot of young Israelis go, backpacking in India. It's true that in Africa and in Asia, but in Europe and the United States, most people have met Jews. So there's no way it's easy to scapegoat and demonize them. There has to be some deeper reason for it. All right, I realize I haven't thanked the sticker people, so let's thank the sticker people. Maybe we'll get some more sticker people. Andrew, thank you for the sticker. And let's see, it's stuff in the beginning. We had Joseph, thank you for the sticker. And Greg, thank you. And Stephen, thank you. And Greg and Gail. And John. And Andrew. All right, I think I got everybody. So thank you guys for the stickers. Yep, I think that's everybody. All right, Harrison. I hate to be a big nag, but obviously not enough to stop being one. Song review this weekend. Yes. Well, reviews this weekend. We'll see what I review. There has to be a certain order to them, but I'll try to get to the song as well this weekend. This weekend and next weekend, I'll try to get to the reviews. Mike, just getting here. I'll listen later. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the support. Harrison, an entire company, Blocks and Minfings, is about to be destroyed for trying to steal 35% of $200,000. One of the best examples of short-sighted and stupid selfishness I've seen in a while. I'm not sure. I wouldn't even use the selfishness term there. But, it's the company's being destroyed by this, again, let the lawsuit play out by this so-called investigative reporter and the hype he's created around it. It's a sick culture that is obsessed about these things. Urban Porcupine, but Yaron, that's impossible. I've been informed by people who never use AI that it isn't good for anything. Yeah, and they would know. They're very good at knowing what's not good for anything. Harrison, hooray for medical AI. More life, less death is a slogan for the ages. Yes, it is. Lone Dissenter says, OnCar's objectivism course is a life changer. If you think keeping your $500 is more important than taking this course, I assure you you're wrong. Do it, sign up, and it's not $500 because you get the 10% discount. So it's only $450. Only $450. So sign up for OnCar's objectivism course today. Don't wait. Lone Dissenter also says, P.S. Don't wimp out. Take the objectivism course graded. Yes, I agree with that. Do all the assignments, get them graded. All right, Lincoln has a 3-part question. Hi, Yaron. Just finished my second year of college, credit-wise, and was wondering how to weigh the options between a state school for my JD or aiming for a prestigious private law school that's a lot more pricey but has better opportunities for prestigious positions that pay better. Not aiming for super prestigious firms with super long hours, but want to save up for wedding and housing down payment, which going in state might help with. Well, I mean, I think you have to look at what is a reasonable expectation for a salary coming out of the state school. What is the reasonable expectation of salary out of the private school? And then, assess if that difference covers the difference in tuition. And of course, you can't just assess it for the first year. You have to assess it over a number of different years. So how many years of the higher salary does it take you to pay off, let's say, the debt from the more expensive school? And it might turn out that the prestigious school, the salaries are only a little bit higher than the state school, and then the state school makes more sense. Or it could turn out that out of the prestigious school, the salaries are much higher, and therefore it makes sense to go to the prestigious school. So I think you just have to run the numbers. And don't just look at the first year numbers. Look over the career, what the averages are. You can probably find that data. Ask AI. AI will be, I think, really a good source for information like that. Okay, a four-part question from Lincoln. I was rewatching old clips of MTV in the 80s and 90s and noticed how there was more diversity in what was popular and more overlap in the artists. Both men and women listening to compared to today when it's just pop music for women and rap music for men. I theorize a more nihilistic culture, post 9/11, harming creativity, heavy internet usage, making teenagers less likely to form bands, and longevity of musicians touring into their 70s are the causes behind it. But I want to hear your thoughts, given you both remember music culture from then and are outside of music age demographics. Yeah, I mean, I really don't know, because I don't know the music culture from today. I don't know how deep this divide between men and women are, and you know, the kind of music. I think generally there's been a deterioration in the quality of music across genres. I think it's less musical, less sophisticated, less complex, more simple, more instant gratification. And so I think you have to think about it in those terms. I don't know about the gender differences. Music was less sexualized in the 80s than it is now. I think that's the influence of rap primarily. But, you know, I don't know. I don't have a good handle on the music scene today, particularly in trying to compare it to the music scene of the 80s. I wasn't big into MTV in those days. In the 80s, I was mainly focused on classical music, not so much on popular culture. Sorry. Randall says, hi, Yaron. Your answer assumes private ownership of resources. But in Australia, most gas is offshore and already owned by the federal government. Within the framework, what's the strongest case against claiming Australians deserve a fair return? I mean, again, what does a fair return mean? So, I mean, okay, the government sells the gas. It should sell it at market prices. It shouldn't overlay it by some tax that makes it more expensive and therefore doesn't sell it, can't export it. I mean, Argentina tried export taxes and it made Argentina poor. So export taxes don't bring revenue. They suppress exports. So what you want is the government to pump as much oil or gas as they can, and they should use the revenue to reduce everybody's taxes. They should use the revenue to fund the government instead of taxing you. That's the best use of that. And there is no such fair thing as a fair return. You know, okay, the government is doing it, fine. Then what should we do with the money coming in from all the exports? We should reduce governments, you know, we should reduce the taxes people have to pay in because the government can fund itself from exporting this gas. I don't understand the logic of an export tax. It's just, it's backward to me. What you tax, you get less of. So if you're going to tax exports, you get less exports. But the whole point is to get more exports, not less. To get more revenue from exports. The tax, who are you taxing exactly? You're taxing the oil companies, but they're the ones that are actually pumping the stuff out of the, I mean, maybe the government, quote, owns it, but who's being taxed? The foreigner who's buying it? But if they are going to be taxed, then they're not going to buy your stuff. They'll rather buy it from somebody who doesn't tax them. So who gets taxed exactly? It just seems like, from an economic perspective, just a completely nonsensical proposal. And fairness has nothing to do with here because there is no such thing as a fair return. Fair to whom? By what standard? I don't know. Neo, is China producing educated citizens proof that the state can do a good job, or are they bankrupting themselves as a consequence? Well, I don't think they're bankrupting themselves by educating their people, but I'm not sure their educational system is very good. I think it produces people who can do stuff by rot. Is it producing innovation? Is it producing thinkers? It's still true that the Chinese still send a lot of their students to the United States to do undergrad and graduate degrees. Is that because we're better at it? So I don't have a clear view that the Chinese educational system run by the government is very good. They have numbers, but I'm not sure it's very good. Randall says that they would be taxing Shell, Woodside, and Chevron. How can that be fair to tax them? Right? How can it be fair to tax them when they're the ones doing the work? The government does nothing. You, the citizen, does nothing. So it says the argument is that the gas industry only pays $1 billion in taxes and that they want a fair return with a 25 export tax. But how is that fair? Why does the gas industry pay $1 billion in taxes? It shouldn't, it's producing gas. It's getting it out of the ground in harsh conditions in the ocean. The government doesn't have the resource, doesn't have the ability to do that. So the gas company, the fair thing is for the gas company to be rewarded for pumping out the gas by being able to profit off of the gas. Why would a tax on them, why would any tax, why would an extra 25% tax be fair? Again, by what standard would it be fair? By the standard of what? To me, taxation is never fair. And it's certainly not fair to tax somebody because they're producing, because they're making, they're improving the world. You're going to tax them? So no, I think these companies should be rewarded for drilling the gas. Maybe the taxes should be cut. Maybe they should be giving less than $1 billion of taxes. That would be fair. Right? So to me, fairness is allowing the producers to benefit from their production. And in this case, the producer is not the government. The producer is not your neighbor. The producer is not the Australian citizen. The producer is Shell and Woodside and Chevron. Those are the producers. They should keep as much as they can. Thanks, Randall. Randall bailed us out today. Did a 450 Australian dollar questions. That is amazing. That really helped out. So I appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Thank you. So far, Iran has not responded to the American bombings. We'll see what happens. Thank you, guys, for all the super chatters. I will see you all tomorrow. We'll probably go back to our regular schedule, 3 p.m. East Coast time tomorrow. So no more 6 p.m. So either 3 or 4 p.m. The rest of the week. See you then. Have